Welcome to 2021. Thanks for joining us for this exciting event, Game-Changing Strategies to Drive Value with APIs. Today we're going to cover a few best practices for building an API-powered digital transformation strategy for 2021, and we're going to look at some industry metrics on API economies and how our team at Google recently researched in a comprehensive survey of global IT leaders, all of that data that we're going to present to you today. I hope you're ready for it. And just before we get started, I wanted to share some of the key takeaways and insights for this report. The State of APIs report launched here just this week. We're going to share some of that information with you, but today we're going to look at important technology trends and notable shifts in how APIs are driving digital transformation. We're going to look at the changing API-first digital economy, increasing importance of API security and governance, and expanding adoption of artificial intelligence and machine learning to power API analytics and security. So at the bottom of your screen, there's going to be a little ribbon, some housekeeping things for you to get started with. There's a set of engagement tools that you can use for this webcast. There's going to be a console and different windows. All are resizable to fit your specific needs and liking. There's an additional resource materials that are available in the resource windows at the right side of the screen. And we encourage you to download any of those resources or links that you might find useful. And at any time during this session, if you have questions, feel free to start jotting those down. You'll see a little Q&A window, and you can tap on that, ask questions along the way. And then towards the end of today's webinar, we will go through and answer some of the questions based on how much time we have. Okay, let's get started. My name is Chris Hood. I am a global customer success and a strategist for Apogee and Google Cloud. I'm so excited to be here with you today. This is a really interesting opportunity for you to get insights from Google, but also I'm offering my email here, and feel free to jot that down. And if you have questions specifically that either we don't get to or something, a topic that we covered today that you want to dive into in more detail, you want to talk about your API program specifically, I'm all yours. Here's your opportunity. Jot down my email, get in touch with me, and let me know how I can help after the webinar. Okay, let's start with API trends. That's going to be at the top of our agenda here. We're also going to cover, these things that we've already talked about in the expectations, the investment priorities that you're going to look at for 2021, API security and governance, and as I mentioned, we're also going to do Q&A at the end. We are also going to share a little bit more about the State of API Economy 2021 report. That's going to be made available for you. You can reach out and get that in the resource section, but I'm going to cover a little bit more about that a later bit in the webcast. Okay, here we go. API trends. That's our first section. So, although digital transformation has been among enterprises' top business imperatives for years, this COVID pandemic, even more recently, has changed, how we look at digital transformation. It's changed not only, based on our market conditions, but it's also created this sense of urgencies. Organizations across the world have been forced now into digital transformation. It wasn't just a project that you had to check off of your list. It became a necessity for most organizations. And our research this year has focused on that. In the response to the pandemic and its effects on business in 2020, we saw that nearly 3 in 4 organizations continued their digital transformation investments, where 2/3 of those companies are actually increasing investments or completely evolving their strategies to become digital-first companies. So how do we look at that? Digital transformation relies on organizations' abilities to package its services and the competencies and assets all into these modular pieces of software that can be repeatedly leveraged. So APIs enable these synergies. It helps let developers easily access and combine data assets in different systems across the organization and be used in different types of ways to create these experiences. According to our research, 56% of IT decision makers view APIs as assets that help organizations build better digital experiences and products. And 52% say APIs accelerate innovation by enabling partners to leverage digital assets at scale. And then another 36% say that they see APIs as strategic assets for creating business value. That's pretty substantial if we think about it. It really starts to show this dynamic and view of APIs and the different initiatives that we're seeing in different businesses. More than half of the participants indicated that their API projects involve traditional system integration projects, such as just connecting internal applications. But most of the top API initiatives more strongly reflect these modern API-first attitudes. So we see that 58% say that top API initiatives emphasize a speeding up of application development. 47% include creation of developer platforms among their core API projects. 32% are using APIs to develop closer B2B partnership programs. And 10% are focused on monetizing APIs to unlock new revenue streams. So we look at this and we're definitely all over the place, that's for sure, with our presentation here today. We see a lot of the top API platforms starting to think about APIs differently. And we see that across really all different types of use cases. We see it in web, where APIs have primarily been the main focus. We've seen it in mobile and automation, IoT devices like your Google Home devices, desktop voice. But I think the key in here is that not only are we seeing it across all of these different types of environments, we're seeing it across these environments and used specifically to develop these new interesting experiences that are driving business through disruption, like what we saw in 2020. So what do you think your organization's API maturity is? I think that's a good question for us to really dive into. A lot of people think about it differently. And in our research, we saw that most organizations rank themselves at this medium maturity level. Now, if we were to break this down and actually dive into what does it mean, low, medium, high, low represents businesses where APIs are still sort of siloed without any type of centralized program to place management of the API lifecycle. And they usually responded to this question with, well, we have some sort of API gateway. Medium maturity identifies with building APIs when they have individual projects or teams that need them. This is sort of like an on demand. I have a project, I need APIs, I go build them. And sometimes they do have a center of excellence team, but mostly still APIs are looked as a project or as a team or as a business unit, and they are produced in that manner. At only 38%, we get to the high level of maturity. And this demonstrates that there's really a great opportunity for growth in this space. If you feel like your organization is at a medium or even at a low, look, there's a lot of people out there that are still trying to get to this high level of API maturity. And these businesses have a centralized, wide area, global, business-focused API-first strategy. They have API management platforms and look for ways to leverage their APIs both for internal use cases as well as external use cases with partners or third party. Okay, so I am curious where you are. And again, you have my email, so would love to hear feedback, share your perspective. Where are you at? Low, medium, or high? So while companies of all maturity levels are likely to be focused on speeding up development, we just talked about that, and new application development, connecting internal applications, the high maturity respondents are significantly more likely to focus on developing these ecosystems or these business-to-business partnerships around their APIs. Also, we see longer-term strategies around things like monetization of APIs and building new experiences through the ecosystems and through the monetization strategies. But if we look at some of the other forms here where people of businesses in the high maturity range are looking at, you can see that it's all really around this centralized global view of APIs within the business. It really becomes API first as opposed to developing applications or projects first. Our customers are leveraging Apogee to engage and inspire millions of developers to build really incredible experiences all through these published APIs. And so much that developer use of Apogee and APIs in general grew by 60% to 4.1 million developers between September 2019 and September 2020. And in the same time frame, we have also seen API traffic go through the roof. Our platform on Apogee, we reached 2.2 trillion API calls in a year. I mean, that is massive, and it demonstrates just how connected we are in everything that we are doing. Okay, so then what should your investment priorities be for 2021? What should you start to focus on, and where should your business spend its energy? So across the board, businesses are planning on investing more in API programs. We're seeing that consistently. And everybody we talk to, there is a clear initiative to invest in API programs. So that's our foundation. From there, we start to see these different areas that respondents identified that they would like to invest more money in. 50% stated that they would invest more money in API security and governance. I think one of the things that has become real through the pandemic is as we start to work from home, access to certain types of business systems or access to customers and communication and different technologies we are using, there is definitely a greater need for security and governance. 41% to grow and manage API adoption for their organizations. They're looking at ways to build the program, get it growing, being successful. 31% to find new ways to monetize their APIs, 38% are investing in building larger or new developer communities, and 31% to make more of their services and data available publicly. And a lot of that goes into the ecosystem strategy that we were just talking about as well. And one of the bigger areas also that we're seeing a lot of energy materialize in is around API analytics. And so what is API analytics? Well, this is really your ability to be able to measure the impact APIs have on your business. And it's essential for successful API programs. These metrics will help you to identify areas to improve, to invest in, to innovate in. It will also show you things that are happening within the marketplace. These numbers show the difference between what organizations are measuring today, that's in the yellow, versus what IT decision makers look at to determine effectiveness of their API program. So for example, 43% want to track speed to market, but only 18% are actually tracking it. That's a key differentiator for mature API programs. These analytics are insights into what's working. What's really incredible is that most organizations are flooded with analytics on customer usage and marketing data, but they're not actually tracking the very mechanisms that are creating some of those experiences. Something for you to think about. These metrics can be found inside all of API analytics. In the last few years, Apigee API analytics usage saw a 75% increase. I mean, this shows just how critical the data is to growing your business. It's massive. I keep using that word, but it's true. It's massive. APIs are how an enterprise's most valuable assets are accessed. That's the bottom line, which to me, it basically is no different than the doors and windows of your office building. These enterprises want friction-free ways for employees to enter the office and be productive, but still use precautions. I mean, we have locks and cameras and access cards to keep physical spaces secure. Digital assets deserve no less, and APIs facilitate virtually all digital interactions. And how you manage APIs can significantly impact your employees and customers. Think about it when you're walking through a door, how important that is, and then let's see if you can help your customers walk right through the door as well. We've already seen the numbers, but a good summary is here. API performance, analytics, and API security are the top priorities for enterprises today. Self-service capabilities for developers, monetization of APIs are also important, but really where people are spending most of their time right now is in understanding how consumers are using their APIs, what is useful and successful, and then also making sure that it's secure so that as data and these experiences are going out, all of your customers are having successful experiences. API analytics is the top API management capability that we're seeing for 2021. So as I was asking earlier, in terms of your maturity, have you considered at all what analytics you'll need to track for your API program this year? Again, I would love to hear. You have my email, send me an email, let me know what you think are some of the things that you want to track on your API program. Another top investment priority is API security and governance. Let's look at that just a little bit. So as risk increases with use, and as I mentioned just a moment ago, we're all working from home, and so as a result, some of that risk has increased. And it's essential that businesses not only carefully manage their API keys or access to APIs, but also you're looking at traffic patterns to really determine if the API calls are coming from legitimate users. You know, this sounds fairly basic and straightforward, but we're seeing in our research that year over year, 172% rise in abusive traffic, making the ability to analyze traffic in near real time and to detect and block that suspicious behavior is becoming more challenging, but even more crucial than ever before. And it also impacts directly some of your digital transformation strategies. If you have business that is reluctant to transform because there is a concern about security, then you're going to have to address the security while not having impact to the overall innovation of the business. This is where APIs come in. The number of protection rules deployed by Apogee customers, here's another great stat. Between 2019 and 2020, we saw a substantial increase, almost 10 times the amount of rules deployed to secure APIs over the course of the last year. And as attacks increased, so did the anomaly detection and bot protection that we offer specifically through things like artificial intelligence and machine learning. And this is great because it demonstrates also the importance of it, but also the process by which we are directly attacking it. This went up 230% between 2019 and 2020. So as you start to think about API security strategies, you should definitely consider areas where artificial intelligence and machine learning can help you detect and block these malicious attacks, and to ensure that your data and services are going out to your customers seamlessly. So we mentioned at the start here that we have a report that we've produced. There is a link in your resources to the full State of API Economy 2021 report. And if you want to test your knowledge of the report and show off your insights to your peers, there's also a little interactive quiz showing on the menu at the bottom here of your screen. And these industry trends will help you build out a better strategy for 2021. It's really a great report. And not only does this report go through what we've seen between 2019 and 2020, it does offer a great insight for 2021. It's looking forward in terms of what we see are the trends and how we think the economy is going to go. And real quick, while you are here, I'm going to share a quick view of this so that you can see it. So let me screen share real quick, and I'll give you a sneak peek of it. So here you go. It's the State of API Economy 2020 report. And it's, again, available for you to download. And you'll see, we'll just scroll through here real quickly. You'll see a great table of contents with a lot of information, good executive summary, the digital transformation imperative, and then a lot of the stats that we've gone through today. There will be a lot more details in here about what the numbers actually mean and how we came up with the numbers, the views of APIs, the top API platform initiatives, and we cover a lot of different customer stories so that you can see exactly how some of our customers have been successful with their API program. Again, a lot of great details in here and customer stories. So when you get a chance, click on the link, go through the interactive quiz if you would like, download the resource, and share this wonderful report with all of your colleagues. And again, let me know what you think. I would love to hear what you, any feedback that you have with the report and some of the data points that you find in it. Okay? Excellent. Okay, and so why should you read the report? I already mentioned a bunch of them for you, but if you want to really go through and understand some of the reasons why you should read the report, there's a lot of great technology trends in here. You can understand the roles of APIs in digital transformation initiatives. I know everybody says that they have a digital transformation initiative, but this actually dives into why APIs should be essential for your digital transformation initiative. And I also mentioned we've got a lot of use case and user stories in here. And of course, the market continuously changes. We saw that last year. We had a complete disruption of markets. And so this also helps you better understand what some of the changes in market for API first economies really look like. So again, download it when you have a chance, and then that will be great to hear your feedback. Now we have some time for some questions, and I'm sure that a lot of you have some great questions. I know that the questions are piling in already. I can see them coming. So let me get to a couple of questions here real quick, and we can dive into it. Okay. You talked about API analytics, but what type of analytics should we track? Okay, that's a good question. That's a very good question. Yes, API analytics will cover a wide range of different types of things that you can learn about your API program. So you can start very simple. You know, I would say that there's a maturity position in here also. You can start with things like the number of APIs you've produced. So you've got multiple teams maybe in your organization. Maybe you're trying to build a program. You start off and you say, hey, we have 10 APIs. Great. Now we've got 15 APIs and 20 APIs. How many APIs are you producing a month? How many number of APIs do you have available? How many APIs are you exposing internally versus externally? How much traffic are you generating through these APIs? Those are all things that are very simple for you to begin tracking. You may also want to track things like how much are they being used? And I say this specifically because if we look at an API first position where you're looking from the outside in terms of what customers want in a digital experience, then you could think about things like if a customer is using it or not, or is it being accessed or not? And there's really this interesting conversation that I have with customers where they say, you know, we have 100 APIs and we want to publish all 100 APIs out into the world. And I say, great. Out of those 100 APIs, how many of them are actually going to be used? And it's a very basic question. If they're not going to be used, then why publish them? But you won't know that unless you have analytics around what's actually being used or not. And then we get into a little bit more challenging type of analytics, which would be things like how much direct revenue is being generated by each API. And if you can demonstrate the revenue trends for an API, then that gives you better business value also. So just a couple of different ways to look at that. There's a lot of videos actually out there. You can go to YouTube and look up something like Apogee API Analytics, and it will give you a whole bunch of different types of analytics that you can track that are either out of the box that come directly in Apogee, or things that you can customize and make your own depending upon what your business needs are. Okay? Okay, let's see what else we got. Let's see. Yeah, so this one goes kind of directly back into what we were just talking about. What steps should we take to become more mature with our API program? Yeah, so this goes back to the low, medium, and high, and you might be at the medium level and you want to become high, or you are low and you want to become medium. How do you kind of adjust through that maturity of your API program? I think really a good starting point is to look at the descriptions that we outlined for what we consider low, medium, high. There's a lot more that goes into that. But things like if you are looking at your APIs solely as a project or as needed basis, that's a good, solid starting point. Ask your team and ask your organization, something like this. Why aren't we focused on building APIs all of the time instead of just as needed? Or how about we build the APIs first, and then as we want to develop new applications, we leverage the APIs that are already built. We don't necessarily need to build APIs every time we're building a new application if we have it in a library of all of the APIs already available. And there's other things that you can look at too. There's a really interesting maturity stat that talks about the difference between price and experience. And a lot of times businesses that are focused on, what is this going to cost and how much are we going to make, and they're really only focused on the sales and the price of it, we see trends that are showing that customers don't necessarily care about what the cost is as long as it's meeting their experience requirements. The customer experience is their deciding factor. And so if you can focus on building APIs that deliver those experiences, then it doesn't necessarily matter what it's going to cost. But if your organization is focused on the pricing models and not on the API models, then you're still in that medium maturity level. You get to, let's focus on APIs, then you get to the high part. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. When you mentioned API monetization, here's another great question. When you mentioned API monetization, and this really just goes with everything else we just talked about, is that monetizing the products that use your APIs or the APIs themselves? See, yeah, this is exactly what we were just saying. This is actually talking about monetizing the APIs themselves. So it's one thing to produce an API first and publish the API first and build those experiences and not necessarily focus too much on what it's going to result in terms of financial or income-wise. It's another thing if you can do that and then also monetize it. And so when we talk about monetizing APIs, we're talking about actually the API itself, the data that it's presenting, and the experience that it can produce. So we've got, again, a lot of great use cases in the API economy report. There are a couple of user stories, customer stories that go into details around API monetization and how those customers were able to monetize the APIs to generate an entirely new line of business and to create additional revenue streams through the data. And again, this goes way past actually thinking about, hey, I'm going to produce a application and I'm going to sell that application. And in that application, we're just so happen to be using APIs. Sure, great. That API is in some way helping to bring in revenue. But that's not really what we're talking about in terms of API monetization. Okay? Hopefully that helps with that one. Let's see, we've got a couple more in here. Yes, so this is a question coming up a lot. Yes, a video of this presentation will be made available. We're going to share that off, with an email afterwards. You'll get a copy of it, and then you'll be able to share it with whoever you want, a link. So everything's going to be recorded, and then you're going to be able to share it. So yes, you'll get that soon. So feel free to look at your inbox for that information. Also, I just wanted to say, if we don't get to your question, because I see a lot of great questions coming in, if we don't get to your question, don't worry, I'll follow up, or we'll have somebody follow up with everybody to make sure that your questions get answered. Or again, as I mentioned, you've got my email, so you can reach out to me and let me know what question you have specifically, and I'm happy to help you there. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions, so let's look here. Here we go. How do we reduce friction in our governance practice? That's a good question. We could probably do an entire web series just on that. How do you reduce friction in our governance practice? Yeah, so I'm guessing because we talked a lot about API security and that being something that people want to invest in, then the concepts around security and governance and how do we, kind of remove that friction? It is a valid question. It's actually a question that we get asked a lot, because I think most people, when thinking about governance, also think that that slows down the process. And so if things are slowing down because we have to implement governance, then we can't do things like get to market faster or, adjust and change as the market demands. So there's two primary things that you can focus on for governance. The first one is developing around some sort of center of excellence or center of enablement, a COE team that really starts to help drive what the API program is going to look like. That team will also help facilitate things like standards and shared flows and shared processes, certain types of tools that you're going to use, access controls. A lot of the things that usually slow things down get to be decided and get to be standardized across the board in order to help prevent some of that slowdown that you might be referring to in governance. The other area that is really critical is automation. So this is another area where we're seeing artificial intelligence and machine learning. But just generally in automation, you can implement a CI/CD pipeline, continuous integration and continuous delivery, that will allow you to automate the entire life cycle of your API program, in which case things can become a lot more fluid. You can automate the testing, you can automate the security checks, you can automate, just about everything so that it can go out and get published as quickly as possible. This, again, can be managed by your COE and then various types of tools that are in place to help automate it. But if you can get to your CI/CD, then your governance practice becomes a lot less frictionless. Okay? One more here. Let's see. You mentioned API adoption is an area for investment for growth. Where do we even start with adoption? Yeah, that's another great question. So API adoption is really around you want to build an API program. You need to build it out. How do you do it, right? How do you grow that program? How do you get more groups, more business units, more developers within your organization to really get excited about APIs? So there's a few ways that this can happen, and there's easy ways, there's hard ways, there's ways that I'll say and you'll say, well, we can't possibly do that. It depends on your organization too. I say that some of these changes in digital transformation, even as a journey, oftentimes isn't really a technical journey. It's definitely more of a cultural journey. It's something that has to happen, maybe slowly, but definitely has to happen within the culture of your organization. The adoption of APIs is sort of similar. There's one way you can do it, which is your leadership can demand it. The leadership can say, we're going to become API first. We have an API program. We see the future of our organization is going to be revolving around developing really exciting API programs to build experiences that we can monetize, all of these things we've talked about. And out of those 38% of highly mature API programs that we've talked about, a lot of those is because executive leadership said, this is something we are going to do. But if you can't get executives to buy in, you can also start grassroots, bottom up, and you can start to prove it. You can build out an API program. You can start to track analytics. Those analytics will show you what is successful, and you can start to see what is working, how fast you can make applications, how much you can reduce friction, how fast you can get to market, how fast you can evolve and innovate. All of these things through analytics you can demonstrate, and you can prove back up to leadership and start to build upon that adoption. So really, there's two ways. You ask your executives, from your CEO to your CIO to your CTO to any C-level, to say, let's do this, and they say, do it, or you just start building it. And I don't necessarily like the build it and they will come, but in theory, you build it and you start to prove it, and you leverage tools like Apogee to help you be successful in doing that. And that's a great place to start for adoption, and it's also probably a great place for us to start to wrap things up. So like I said, if I did not get to your question, feel free to email me, or we will follow up and get back to you as soon as possible. We would like your feedback. If you could spend a couple of minutes and click on this link or take a picture of the QR code and fill out the quick survey, let us know what you think and share your feedback about this event. We would love to hear about it. Thank you again for joining and participating. And as always, there is a lot of resources. Click on the State of APIs report so that you can go and learn more. And as always, thank you for participating. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. And I look forward to talking with you on another webinar very soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.